Hello, wherever you are, I hope it's comfortable and that you're safe and healthy and comfortable where you are. If you're not healthy this morning or afternoon, we certainly pray that health will be returning soon. We're in the spring of 2020, and this particular lesson was prepared for March the 15th, and its title is The Israelites in the Wilderness. We have to start with the word wilderness in our area. We're in the southeastern part of the United States, and when we hear wilderness, we think wilderness road. We think trees and bushes and streams of water and maybe waterfalls and mountains to climb over. But the word wilderness in the scriptures refers to a very, very different land. It was dry as a bone in many places, and in particular, some translations just give up on the word wilderness and say desert. It was a dry, scary place. Moses and the people of Israel, meaning the descendants of Israel, also named Jacob, had left Egypt after being enslaved and being there for about 400 years. They'd had a hard time and things had not gone well. So I'm going to get you started a little bit on how we get into our situation. And I just want to warn some of you that we're going to be talking about snakes today. No pictures, I promise. No live snakes, just the idea, okay? So we can look all the way back in Exodus, and we find the people going through the wilderness, through the desert, and they can't find water, and they begin to complain against Moses, their leader. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us? And Moses says to the Lord, what can I do with these people? They're about to stone me. And the Lord amazingly and miraculously, in the gracious presence and knowledge of the Lord, takes Moses to a rock, of all things, and Moses hits the rock and it releases the water that then keeps the people alive and happier. That was in Exodus 17. Then if you go to Numbers 14, you can find that all the Israelites complained or grumbled or criticized. They're all unhappy again. They have moved forward from place to place to place, and once again, they're out of water. So they're criticizing their leaders, Moses and Aaron, and saying, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, where they started, remember? If only we had died in the desert, where we've already walked for years. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land to fall by the sword? Another nation was threatening them. And they said, let's pick a leader and let's go back to Egypt. Well, at that point they didn't, and God worked with them and helped lead them through Moses, and they were able to win some victories and to keep moving. But life didn't necessarily get better. We're going now to Numbers, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, the fourth book in the Hebrew Bible, our Old Testament, to chapter 21. It's just a little story, just verses 4 to 9 in Numbers 21, but it's very memorable. From Mount Hor, they set out by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, but the people became impatient on the way. The people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we detest this miserable food, which would have been the manna God had provided them. Then the Lord sent poisonous serpents, sometimes called fiery serpents, maybe because of the pain from their bite, and they bit the people so that many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, we have sinned by speaking against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord to take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said to Moses, make a poisonous serpent, or a fiery serpent, or fiery snake, or seraph, all these words are the same, and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten shall look at it and live. So Moses made a serpent of bronze and put it upon a pole. And whenever a serpent bit someone, that person would look at the serpent of bronze and live. It's an amazing little section here with the struggle of the Israelites to try to figure out where was God, what was going on. Moses was the only leader left living. Aaron and his sister Miriam had died shortly before this time of the snakes, incident of the snakes. And there they were, hungry and thirsty and sick and tired of manna. Now, Moses was caught by himself out there in the desert what to do with these people. And they apparently took some time to think about what was going on and about their own responsibility and their own reaction, that it was not just something that had happened to them, but part of it was what they were doing. And so they came to Moses to confess of their own sinfulness and to plead for his help. It makes me think of how many times we have ranted and raved and found somebody to blame, preferably a leader of some kind, because we can blame them for everything, and then realize that part of the responsibility is ours, and that we have helped to set the circumstances. And when God gave Moses a way to respond to it, God didn't just say, I'm just going to wave a wand over the people and the Israelites will watch the snakes, I'll run away, and that'll be the end of the problem. No, he gave them a part in it. First, Moses had to make the serpent and put it up, but they had to be willing to look up. If they weren't willing to look up and face the serpent, they couldn't find holy healing and the presence of God and that wonderful getting over that which had terrified them the most. They had to face it and they had to look at it. Right now we're in the middle of dealing with the coronavirus in our country and around the world, and part of what we've had to do is look at it. Sometimes we've just wanted to say, well, that's nothing, there are all kinds of viruses, and there are, and there have been throughout creation, and there will continue to be viruses. And the truth is everything on earth is trying to make something new. Every baby is new. Every virus is trying to make a new one. Everything is trying to make something new. When the spring is coming, every tree is making itself new in a wonderful way. The flowers are bursting out of the ground. So there's always something new, and some of it's good and some of it's not so good. And so we've had to come to grips with looking at this particular virus that can cause the illness and say, what can I do to help stop it? Not what does everybody else need to do, but when it comes to me, how can I be the one that for where I am and who I am, I do not risk spreading it to anyone else? Over and over, God gives us joint responsibility. We are blessed to have people that are working on finding medicines and have treatments, and the people that have made the treatments that we already have and that are in the medical facilities. We're so blessed to have those. When the 1918 flu came, they didn't have anything. We've got lots of options. We've got lots of options to connect with each other. You're either hearing or seeing me that not so many years ago would have been impossible, and so we can connect with each other even when we're keeping a safe distance. When the Psalms refer to this instance, they go back to looking at all the good things God had done for the people and reminding them that in the sight of their ancestors, he worked marvels in the land of Egypt, in the fields of Zon. He divided the sea and let them pass through it and made the waters stand like a heap. In the daytime, he led them with a cloud and all night long with a fiery light. He split rocks open in the wilderness and gave them drink abundantly as from the deep. He made streams come out of the rock and caused waters to flow down like rivers. Yet they sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the wilderness? Even though he struck the rock so that water gushed out and torrents overflowed, can he also give bread or provide meat for his people? Therefore, when the Lord heard, he was full of rage. A fire was kindled against Jacob. His anger mounted against Israel because they had no faith in God and did not trust his saving power. Psalm 78 describes what God had done for them. Yet he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven. He rained down on them manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Mortals ate of the bread of angels. He sent them food in abundance. As I listened to someone talking about dealing with our emotional and mental health in the midst of thinking about all of these things, she suddenly said, be sure and keep a gratitude list. And the interviewer said, a what? She said, a gratitude list. She said, at the end of every day, write down at least 3 things for which you can be grateful. And they can be tiny things, like the beauty of the raindrops that are lingering on the branches, of seeing a daffodil in another person's yard who's taken the time to grow it, or maybe your own, of seeing a driver that stopped and let somebody else into the traffic, of remembering the people you love and the people who love you. That our souls desperately need to root themselves in gratitude, just like the Israelites needed to root themselves in gratitude and remembrance of what God had done. Now, Jesus thought this was such an important story that he used it to talk about himself, and that makes it more of a focal point for us. Up in John 3, verses 9 through 15, we find Nicodemus, who was a studier of the scriptures and trying earnestly to live it, saying to Jesus, how can these things be, when Jesus talked about a new life? And Jesus answered, are you a teacher of Israel, and yet you do not understand these things? Very truly, I tell you, we speak of what we know and testify to what we have seen. Yet you, and in this case it was all of you, good, they were good Southerners. They really said you all. Yet you all do not receive our testimony. If I have told you about earthly things and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you about heavenly things? No one has ascended into heaven except the one who descended from heaven, the Son of Man, or the human one, Jesus. And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. And so we find ourselves called not just to rant and rave and blame and fear, but to have faith and to look up to the one who loves us, who is willing to take all of our sin and all of our weakness and receive it and cherish us and bring us to his presence for all of eternity. And so we're called to look beyond those things that irritate us, scare us, worry us, to look to the one who has cared for us all our lives and centuries before and will continue to care. I urge you, whatever's going on in your life, to think about the blessings you've received in the past and today and expect to receive tomorrow. The people who have loved you and that you love. If somebody's name comes to your mind, give them a phone call. They may be sitting at home feeling lonesome. They need to know you remember and you care. If you know a joke, even if it's a bad joke, tell them a joke. Which makes me think I'm going to tell you 2 bad jokes that you can then carry into the world like some sort of bad virus. One is the question, do you know of the most famous male financier in the Bible? It was Noah, because he built an ark and floated his stock while everybody else was under liquidation. And then, do you know the best female financier in the Bible? You don't? It was Pharaoh's daughter. She went down to the bank of the Nile, along the river, and she withdrew a little profit. It gets worse, doesn't it? That's as much as I'm going to do. But share whatever smile, laugh, joy you have that you can tell, funny stories about things you've done or heard. Rejoice in what life brings us, even as we struggle with this difficult time, feeling like the Israelites back there with the snakes. Look up at the gift God gives us now and remember the gifts God has given us in the past. God is faithful, and God will be with us through this as well. Go in peace, live in joy, share that love and hope. Amen.